Hey, what's up, guys? This is Brendan Donahoe with Brendan's Beats, and it's time for a review of the new Movements album, Feel Something.
What's it like to be erased every time you fall asleep? Waking up.
Movements is a hard rock, kind of spoken word style group that really made waves last year with their debut EP, Outgrown Things, which was an emotional, really quick and short but hard rock, hard-hitting record that really, I ranked it in my top 10 records of the year last year, and I stand by that. I think it was fantastic. I will link in the description my review of that record, as well as the interview that I was able to do with them when I was on staff at Vernoy News. Fantastic guys, love the last EP, so I was beyond excited for this record. As some of you might know, I actually missed this album. I didn't know it was coming out, and I periodically would check on Spotify, just so happened to see about a month after it came out that it had released. I feel terrible about it, and normally I wouldn't do a review, but I enjoyed that last record so much, and they were nice enough to let me do an interview as a little editor at a high school newspaper, so I figured I will do what I can to help them out and review this new record, which I liked quite a bit. So let's take it track by track. We'll talk about what they did right, what they did wrong, and maybe give it a score and see what they might be able to do next time. So let's start with track 1, Full Circle. Great opening track, really interesting guitar intro. The vocals seem a little bit odd in the beginning, but they come in strong very quickly. The lyrics are fantastic. The vocals are emotional, and that's kind of the key to Movements and what they do sonically is really emotional vocals that really kind of tell the story just through their sound, let alone through the lyrics. The outro lyrically is iffy. I don't love it, but I think it's a really good track overall. The drums could use a double kick or something to kind of spice it up. And the drums throughout this record, that's kind of a problem. They could really use something to kind of spice it up and be a little bit faster, have a few more rolls in it. But overall, good opening tracks. Let's move on to track 2, Third Degree. Probably, in my opinion, the worst track on the record. It's not terrible. The intro is pretty good. And the snare on these drums all throughout the whole record is just produced and recorded perfectly. I really don't know what they did, but they should let that secret out, because that sounds fantastic. And I don't just mean the way it's played, I mean literally the way it's recorded and the way it sounds. The fills are a little bit better on this track. Musically, I think it's a little bit better. It's a little bit poppy and a little bit mainstream, but the biggest issue here is the lyrics. I don't care for the lyrics. They're a little bit kind of lame and kind of ham-fisted, which is not really what Movements normally does. They're normally very intelligent and kind of layered, and here it just kind of smacks you in the face with what he's trying to say, and I don't care for that. The chorus with the "Be My Third Degree" line, I don't care for. But overall, it's not a terrible track. It's probably my least favorite on the record, but overall, it's still a good track. So now we've moved on to track 3, Colorblind, which, despite what the title might suggest, is not actually about race. But the intro is very good. We're really back on track from the start. Lyrically, this song is very impressive. And it really does what Movements made a name for themselves doing on that Outgrown Things EP, with bigger words and really difficult kind of rhyme schemes and things like that. The cadence on the verses is really interesting. Just kind of the way that it's structured, as far as I believe it does like a 3-bar cadence, which I really like a lot. My biggest issue with this, and this is an issue that I have not only on this song and not only on this record and not only for this artist, I mean, this happens all the time. Song titles are not punchlines, and they don't need to be treated like punchlines, and I don't understand this. They do this thing where they build up the chorus, and then at the end of the chorus you say the name of the song, and it's like you've worked this whole thing together, and then boom, it's like it's a punchline, and it's not necessary. You don't need to do that. I can remember the name of a song without it being the punchline to the chorus. But other than that, and that's not terribly abused on this track any more than it is by a lot of other people. But other than that, this is a great track. His vocals are back on that bridge. Patrick Miranda comes back on this bridge and sounds exactly like what we loved on Outgrown Things. Very, very emotional, very, very well written, well performed. I would like to hear, and this is another comment through the whole record, I would like to hear a little bit more bite in that guitar. The guitar really doesn't have any real crunch to it, and it makes the sound a little bit more poppy and not quite rock enough. So I'd like to hear a little bit more bite. But other than that, great track. And we'll move now to track 4, Daylily. So this is one of the more popular tracks off of this record. The lyrics are fantastic. The vocal cadence and the melodies are really cool. Again, the instruments need to hit a little bit harder, especially on the chorus. They need more dynamic. And even the drums don't sound terrible on this track. And you know, I shouldn't say terrible. They sound fine throughout the record. They're just nothing special. But the drums actually do something a little bit better on this track. Even in the happy lines, even in, I mean, on every lyric of every song, there's so much emotion, and Patrick Miranda is just giving it all he's got. I mean, he is, not that he needs to, because the instrument, the performance for the instrumentation is pretty good as well, but I mean, he is acting like he's carrying this record on his back, and that's fine, because my lord does he give a performance on every track, every single time he comes on the microphone. I mean, it is emotional and it's powerful, and the lyrics are great. Everything about it is great, and I just love to hear an artist really, really give it everything he's got for every single track. So now we'll move on to track 5, easily my favorite track on the record. The guitar lead at the intro is really nice. The snare on the drums is so good. It's always great throughout this whole record. And the story is set up very early. Patrick is telling the story here of dealing with dementia and dealing with people in his family kind of starting to lose their minds as they get older. It really identifies well with kind of the younger fan base that they have, because this is an issue I think that a lot of young people deal with. The second verse is a little bit overdone, but aside from that, absolutely perfect performance. The chorus here just hits so hard, and like I said on the last track, I mean, Patrick Miranda is just giving so much of himself to this record that it just comes through every single time he sings. Every time you hear a vocal, you hear the amount of dedication and power that Patrick Miranda is lending to this project. And I love every second of it. One thing I would like to hear is that he could let his vocals kind of detach from the rhythm a little bit. He gets into these kind of spoken word sections, which is really what made Outgrown Things such a special project. And when he gets into them, he kind of, more so on this record than he did on the last one, he really attaches his vocals to the rhythm, and it makes it sound a little bit forced. I would like to hear, like he did more on Outgrown Things, where it was like he was speaking and it could match up rhythmically, but it didn't have to. And there was more emotion that way. It makes it feel more organic. But aside from that, like I said, favorite track on the record, and just so good. Just such a good song. So now we will move on to track 6, Fever Dream. This song, like a lot of others, has really, really good lyrics in it. I think that he has this habit, Patrick has this habit where he writes like 90% great lyrics to a song and then just kind of pads out those last 10% with little filler lines and things like that. So overall, good lyrics, but there are some issues. The idea of using an acoustic guitar comes through really well, is a really interesting kind of change of pace. It would be better if before now, you know, the guitars had a little bit more bite to them, and the track listing had been a little bit heavier. This album so far, and I think through the whole thing, actually is quite a bit softer than Outgrown Things. And if you had the first 5 songs sounding like Outgrown Things, and then you come in with track 6 and you hit this acoustic guitar, I mean, that change of pace would be fantastic dynamically. It still is, but it could have been a lot better. In this track, the song title happens in the verse. Like I said, the title does not have to be a punchline to your chorus. And this is done very, very well. Not that it can't happen in the chorus or it can't happen at the end of the chorus, but it doesn't need to be set up like a joke. But, you know, I don't want to get off on that tangent again. But there's kind of a lack of emotion in these vocals, but it's intentional, and it really kind of drives the point home. And the second verse on this track is incredible. It's well written. It's very, very good. Well performed. Patrick Miranda, again, just giving it his all. And so now we get into track 7, Suffer Through. It has a really cool opening, but I wish that they would take the little guitar lead part out and just open up with the vocals and the band all coming in at once. They kind of overuse the idea of a guitar lead and then in comes the rest of the band. I mean, that's pretty much the intro to almost every track on this album. So it would be a lot better, but still, good opening, really cool melody on the guitar. Snare sounds fantastic again. The vocals are very well performed, but the lyrics are they're all right. There's some cheesy parts. There's a line where he says, on the surface, no one will notice, and things like that. It's kind of aiming towards that kind of millennial angst that they really tap into well. But other parts are great. You know, at the end where he kind of just keeps repeating, my demon is me. I think that's a really cool lyric, and it's a cool part on the record. The outro is interesting. They use kind of only drums. They take everything else out, and it's just kind of a drum outro. But it would be better if the drums would do something, and that's the case on this track too. They don't do anything. They just kind of keep a beat, and they have a couple little fills in it. But I would like to see a little bit more inspired drum work, and they definitely have it there because Outgrown Things had some great drum parts on it. They just doesn't really come to play in this record. But regardless of that, another good track. And so we'll move on to track 8, Deep Red. Out of nowhere, you get a fantastic bass guitar intro. The bass is mixed totally different. It has totally different effects on it than you've heard throughout the rest of the record. It sounds like, actually, it reminded me a little bit of some of the early Tool records, where, you know, they would use the bass as kind of another guitar with a little bit deeper sound. I really like that a lot, actually. I wish that they would have stuck with that throughout the entire record. The vocal cadence is really cool again. It's fun to listen to. The instrumentals are very, very tight on this track. Good stops and bends, and the way they all move together very, very well. You can tell that they've been playing together for a while. The song actually ends in a very different way, which is nice to hear. You think for a second, actually, I thought at first that it was ending the way it's always ended, you know, where they have this habit on this record of a guitar intro and then the track, and then kind of a vocal outro where the last note just kind of hangs and dissipates, and that's basically how they end almost every track. And they did that a little bit on Outgrown Things as well. But here I thought that was going to happen again, and then it goes into this really cool stripped down, just kind of guitar, very clean sounding guitar outro. And it's interesting because I thought maybe, this is going to lead into the next song or something, but it really didn't. I mean, it was just a nice kind of contemplative guitar track, or not track, but outro. And I thought that was a really effective way to end the song, and I would have liked to see more of that on the whole record. And it's a little late now for them to introduce that. But I mean, this song comes almost out of left field. I mean, a totally different intro, totally different outro, different sound for the bass. The drums do a few kind of unique things. But overall, I mean, this is one of my favorite tracks. So very, very good as we come here near the end. So we get now to track 9. It's getting a bit repetitive, but it's very good. You know, it's repeating good things. Another really good start. The guitar intro is starting to wear on me, but other than that, a good beginning. The bass kind of keeps the sound that they established in the last track, which, like I said, I like a little bit better. The chorus, the vocals on the chorus are really nice, very emotional, and the vocals are good throughout. This track specifically doesn't really stand out of the track list in any special way, and that's a common complaint I think throughout the record for me, is that nothing stands out that strong. But overall, I still think very good song, and we're getting kind of a repetitive nature to it, but it's repetitive on good things. And so now we move on to track 10, Submerge. Just, right when you're thinking they don't have anything left to surprise you with, they come through with a pretty surprising, pretty unique track on the track listing. There's a really cool kind of a droning intro. Again, not a guitar intro, which is so nice. Just a cool little drone. And the vocals are screaming and emotional, and like I said, Patrick is just giving it his all, but this time they're far away, they're distant. It's like they put the microphone on the far end of a long hallway and he screamed all these vocals out, and it really gives this feeling of emotion and anger and very serious issues that are far away and that are not really able to be dealt with, and it really kind of plays into the emotional and just general style of this whole album, but this track specifically. Very energetic vocals contrast really well with the kind of chilled out, low-key music. There's no drums, no bass, just guitar and a kind of pad drone sound. The vocal melody on the chorus is a little bit cheesy, but still I like it a lot. And like I said, this far off shouting and screaming makes for a really cool sound, and it's a really cool outro as well. So definitely a very surprising track, and I like that they put it here. They kind of are just trying out some new stuff at the end of this record, and I like everything they've done. So we'll move on now to the final track, track 11, The Gray. So they close out really strong with a great track. The guitar lead is cool. Again, guitar lead intro. If it sounds like I'm repeating it too much, it's because they repeat it too much. But it's still fun to hear, and it's got a really cool melody to it. Poor Patrick, man. This guy is giving it his all. I don't even know. He probably couldn't speak for a month after this record was over, because, he poured his heart and soul into this album through his vocals. There's a line in this song where he says, "Knots in my throat coil and constrict." And I thought that was great lyrics, but it also was almost kind of funny to hear, considering the way he'd been singing this whole time. The drums aren't terrible on this track. They're a little bit better than what we've heard so far. And they revisit that kind of spoken word style that made them really popular. I would have liked to see over the entire track list a lot more of that. That was something that really kind of stuck out to me, was the lack of that, and it would have been better to hear a little bit more. But overall, still a good song, a good track to finish out on, and a good album. So let's move on now to what they did right, what they did wrong. We'll start with the good. The vocals, incredible. You can't beat it. Patrick Miranda, one of the best, most emotional frontmen in rock music right now, really, really understands what he's writing about, feels what he's writing about, and that comes through the whole way through this record. You can't stop loving how good these vocals are. The lyrics, again, really good. He's a great writer. This album hinges on Patrick Miranda's performance, and he really doesn't disappoint. He's a great writer, great vocals. The guitar leads and the melodies there are really good. They make for a fun style overall, I think, and something you'll want to revisit a few times. And they kind of establish what you'll be humming for the next few days. Some of the bass lines are a lot of fun. When they let the bass be in front, and especially towards the end when they kind of, they changed it all up and they changed up the way the bass had been recorded, I thought that the bass lines were a lot of fun to hear. And overall, a great addition to the record. So we'll move on now to some of the things they did wrong. The biggest problem is the lack of that spoken word style that made them as good as they were on Outgrown Things. This is the biggest issue on this record for me. It's very good overall, and there are portions of this spoken word, but I think maybe 2 or 3 songs use it. Definitely not enough. You need a lot more of that. That is really what has made them and what has allowed them to stand out as a group, is this cool style of mixing a lot of old mediums like spoken word and poetry into kind of newer sounds. So I think that I could really do for a lot more of that. The drums on this record are boring. They just kind of keep the beat, and they just kind of do a couple little fills, and it's just, there's nothing fun, nothing super inspired about them. I would have loved to hear a lot more inspired drum parts, especially, use some double kick, use some a lot of fills, do a really complicated rhythm in the background. This is, when you talk about kind of harder rock music, one of the things that makes that so special is the drum work, and that's really missing from this record. It gets a little bit repetitive. There are, for the most part, I think it does a good enough job of shaking things up that you won't notice, but there are times when you get kind of bogged down by the repetitive nature of the record. Overall, I think that this album lacks the replay value that the EP, the Outgrown Things EP, and obviously the single that they released before that, which was called Protection. It lacks the replay value that they've been known for up until now. I think that's a hard thing to carry over into a record. It's a lot easier to make 6 songs that you want to hear 50 times than to make an 11 or 12 song record that you'll want to hear 50 times. So I understand the difficulties, but I think and you got to know too that they were really pressured to put out a full record. After you get so much popularity off of an EP like that, obviously you get a lot of pressure to put out a full record. And in a lot of ways, I think they did a great job of avoiding some of the pitfalls. They had been kind of lumped in with a lot of groups that I didn't care for too much. That I Prevail kind of, I'm trying to think of a few more groups like that, but kind of the kind of teen metal scene that I just don't care for that much, and they did avoid that. They did their absolute best to stay away from all of that and put out kind of a new, unique record that doesn't sound anything like that. But like I said, it lacks the replay value. It's a bit repetitive, and it doesn't quite hit as hard as the original EP did. So there are some problems. If I had to give it a rating, I would give it probably a strong 6 to maybe a light 7. Not too bad. Definitely worth hearing, and a few replays. But I don't think it's going to go down in the history books the way the EP did. So anyway, that's Movements Feel Something. Keep an eye out on my channel. We've got a few reviews coming out of some new records as we near the end of the year. Hit subscribe if you like this video, share, make sure and hit that bell icon so you know when I've got something new coming out. And if you really dug this review, let me know in the comments. Tell me what I got right, tell me what I got wrong, tell me what I should talk about next. And until next time, happy listening.